This is a sector that is going to deliver exceptional returns in the long term. Again, this is for those players who have a long term horizon in the market. In the short term, if you see, there's a lot of short term euphoria in the defense space. And this is again a space where corrections will happen, and those corrections have to be seen as an opportunity. I'll give you precise reasons as to why there is tremendous amount of scope in this particular sector in years to come. If you recollect, defense was one of the strongest pockets that I had alerted about many weeks back. So, banks, finance, defense, chemicals, metals, hospitals, these were the six pockets that I was broadly tracking in the market. And out of these, only metals failed. And I've explained earlier why metals will also set up. It is just a matter of time. So, the first slide that I've put out is categorization of countries and why the world is changing at a rapid rate that many of us cannot even understand. There are a lot of global games going on. The first is countries of reasonable size who want to grow. That is, growth countries are those who want to grow and live in peace. The second is countries with a lot of power play. This indicates struggle between two superpowers who have ambition of dominance and of geographical expansion. The third is neutral countries. They want to grow, they want to live in peace, but they are restricted due to their size. I'll come to the examples in a bit. And the last category is the nuisance countries. These nuisance countries are those that serve as a mouthpiece of power countries and are funded and supported to arm twist countries of strategic importance. So this next slide, I'll just put out some examples. Within the growth category, I've put out India, Canada, Germany, Japan, UAE, Australia. Within the power play countries, I've put out USA and China. Within the neutral countries, I've put out New Zealand, Switzerland, Singapore, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, South Korea, Vietnam. I may have missed few. That is understandable. And in the nuisance space, of course, there is Pakistan, the leader of all, some countries in South Asia, in Southeast Asia, East Africa, and some in Middle East. We all know which those countries are. So basically, the defense sector is going to grow leaps and bounds because of the categorization that is currently there in the world. So let me now take you to the next slide, which is defense spending as percentage of GDP. So when you look at the defense spending, Israel spends about 8.8% of its GDP, Russia 7.1%, Saudi Arabia again 7.1%, USA 3.4%. Remember the size of GDP. So the number is huge. And between 2 to 3%, currently India spends about 2.3%, between 2 to 3%, India, UK, France, and Germany. China is about 1.7%, but again, the size of GDP of China obviously is of huge proportion. So this is currently the defense spending. Post Russia and Ukraine conflict, you can see a lot of European countries are also expanding on their defense budget. But there is a key point that you have to understand. Most of these economies are leveraged in terms of the debt they have with respect to their GDP and growth rate. India also has debt in terms of GDP, but the growth rate is relatively higher. Our fiscal deficit is completely under control. So India is in a sweet spot when it comes to the defense sector. They have to expand, that is the manufacturing capability. Couple of other things that India has to focus upon after the recent conflict, the way we have seen, despite of the fact that whatever happened, there was a narrative that was played against us. India has to focus on increasing per capita income, spend more on education and health, and then, yes, spend more on defense, because that is the only way out given the kind of geopolitical problems that we are going to face in years to come. So, let me now give you a brief overview of the global defense sector. First, the reason why defense spending is increasing across the world is because of rising geopolitical tensions over the last 15 odd years. You've seen the US China conflict, NATO Russia conflict, Middle East conflict does not die down, Indo Pacific, India China, India Pakistan. Recently, during the India Pakistan conflict, you also saw a lot of noise coming from Bangladesh. That is again a potential conflict that will happen in years to come. The second is global defense spending. It's forecasted to cross about $2.5 trillion by 2030. Again, this industry is growing by 4 to 5% in terms of CAGR. Technology focus. This is where you have to focus because this is where you'll be able to identify which companies to go behind. Cyber warfare, drones, UAV, hypersonics, AI and defense. The next race is the next gen tech. Again, research and development. This is where India spends about 1.5%. It has to increase. It has to increase this number. Defense partnerships. You're seeing strategic partnership between the Quad is there, NATO is there, between Australia, UK, US. There's joint development, a lot of military exercises happen. Again, this is within the umbrella of global diplomacy. The thing here is that while there are strategic defense partnerships that India is also part of, at the end of the day, every country has to fight its own battle. This is life. Even we on day-to-day basis have to fight our own battles. Nobody's going to come and rescue. Supply chain realignment. There is one point I made earlier in the video. The opportunity for India is low cost labor and relatively low cost research and development budget that India will have to allocate money to. Again, we have seen this in space tech program. The amount of money we spent to carry out certain missions and compare that with what NASA did. There is a huge difference. So this is India's edge. Let's hope India can capitalize on this. And then long-term trend. Military strength will be the biggest deterrent in the future. Superpower means economic and military powerhouse. Why do you think the recent conflict ended so soon? There is a different narrative that global media is putting out. That is fine. It is their job. But we all know what has happened because the proof has been given by the defense forces this time. And it's clear who made the first call for negotiation because the writing was on the wall. The way India handled the situation, you should see how professional the government was, how professional the media briefings were, how professional our defense forces were, as opposed to whatever was happening across the border, which was nothing but a joke. So, long term trend is with this industry. And this industry is only going to grow leaps and bounds because the geopolitical tensions are not going to go away. You have to understand, after World War II, the world saw relative peace for over 55 years. No major conflicts anywhere. And this trend started shifting post 9/11, and it is only accentuated. And it is only going to increase because these things are also cyclical in nature. We had a relative period of peace for about 50 odd years. We will have a cycle of disturbance for the next 50 odd years. That is starting from 2000, 2001 to maybe something like 2040, 2045. This is what is going to happen. Let me now put out the data for India's specific defense industry. Currently, the budget is rising for this 6.2 lakh crore in FY25, growing at 6 to 8% higher than the global trend. Make in India, Atmanirbhar again. The defense production exports are rising. Defense exports may cross about 50,000 crores by 2030. This is a huge space. Private sector entry. There are a lot of established private sector companies that are also coming into this space. Again, this is good because this lowers the cost of production. It brings in more people. It brings in more research. This is again fantastic for this industry. Import substitution push. Over 500 items are banned from import. The boost is given to PSU and private defense manufacturers. Again, these things take time. It will take time to see these results. Also have a lot of export focus for defense industry, which is great. Again, what India has been able to achieve, a lot of countries have taken note of it, irrespective of whatever global media is saying. And finally, the strategic needs. There are a lot of border threats, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So spending has to be high on air defense, surveillance, and naval assets. Now let me come to the key growth areas within the defense sector. First is drones and UAVs. Products theme companies that caters to surveillance, precision strikes. This will again be a global massive trend in years to come. Look into which companies do this. It's not at all difficult. These days you have a lot of AI agents available, ChatGPT, Claude AI. Upload annual reports of all the defense sector companies and start asking questions. I'll put out some questions for you. Electronic warfare and radars. Space and air dominance, given India's strategic location, integration between, this is a hint, integration between space tech, air defense, naval defense. This has a huge scope. There are precisely 3 companies that focus on this. I cannot take company's name for obvious reasons. Cybersecurity and AI, data protection, predictive warfare, and AI-driven insights. Again, which company focuses on this? There are only 2 companies in this space, the integration, cybersecurity, and AI. It's not that difficult to find out. Missile systems and Navy. Strategic deterrence, that is the importance, indigenous tech, domination of Indian Ocean. Because this is of strategic importance to us. Again, a simple question. There is only one company that caters to this. You can find these answers easily if you just put in some effort. So what I'm now going to share with you is a formula of Peter Lynch extended to a sector. So Peter Lynch used to say that whenever government gets behind a sector with the aim towards export, and obviously for self-consumption, and the private sector chips in, that is when the sector moves into a sweet spot for the next many years. And again, I have to specify for the next many years because currently You open everything on social media, television, it is all about defense, defense, defense. These stocks will correct. That is the nature of market. So this space, this theme, this investment, and you must research further, it is only for those who have the patience and the discipline to understand and invest. So first point is government. The Indian government's focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat and increased defense budget allocations are driving growth in this sector. Private sector is investing big time in this theme. Well established companies are now expanding their presence in defense manufacturing, indicating broader industry growth. And a sweet spot is export driven. India is emerging as a net defense exporter, opening new markets for domestic companies. So, this again is a formula that has been given by Peter Lynch in his book, and I felt it applied on defense sector. So let me now do a SWOT analysis on the Indian defense industry. The first is strength. We are the third largest military in the world. Strong policy push, that is Make in India. Expanding defense export portfolio. Presence of capable PSUs plus rising private players. Low cost skilled labor for production and R&D. I think India has to spend more on R&D. It has to increase its budget. While, see, our country is in a complicated kind of a place as well because of population, because of a lot of people being dependent on the government. Government also has to cater to that. But we have to find a way. Bringing more FDI, open up the economy more. There has to be some compromise that has to be made somewhere to bring in more money. I leave it to the policymakers. Weakness. This is the biggest one, that is bureaucratic delays, complex procurement process, technological gap that exists with Western countries and Chinese counterparts, dependence on foreign OEMs for critical technologies, and limited R&D spend. So the number is 1% of GDP goes towards defense R&D in India versus 4% in the US. I think for China it is 3.9%. Opportunities. We have a huge unmet demand, modernization of Army, Navy, and Air Force. Export push, again, this I've covered. Entry of private sector, this is also something I've covered in startup drones, cybersecurity, and civil military dual use applications. That is, there is a lot of civil use for drones, navigation, satellites as well, and military, obviously, in this case, is more important. What are the threats? Budget, obviously. Remember, there is a lot of freebies that are being given out that has to be put in check. As I said, India is in a relative position where things can move up, that is in an optimistic way, at a greater speed, but we also have our limitation in terms of our politics. That is a huge threat. Internal red tape. Also, what happens if a new government comes in after 4-5 years? What happens if leadership changes? Because whenever political change happens and the new government comes in, it's not necessary for the incoming government to have the same strategic vision. So obviously this is a threat. So let me now explain why this defense sector trend is a trend that is going to last for many years. You have to understand that answer to such questions at times cannot be found in annual reports or on numbers or financial analysis. But you have to boil down to something like a pure qualitative analysis given the kind of developments that are happening in and around the world and especially in Asia. So I've divided it into 4 subtopics. One is threat analysis, deterrence, strategic autonomy, and hybrid warfare. So threats will continue. Cross-border terrorism is not going to die down, because you have to understand that this is an asymmetric warfare that is used as a low-cost deniable method to bleed India. And that is why post-Uri, a strategic shift was needed as a deterrence to potential threats that can happen in India. So this strategy of asymmetric warfare is to keep our government and military busy so that the rate at which India grows, that slows down a lot, plus creating a lot of tensions within India. This is just nothing but a strategy. So response of India is actually a new norm. That is post 2016, the stand that India has taken. And this time, if you see the extent to which India has caused damage, this is a new norm and this won't be reversed. Let's say tomorrow a new political party also comes into the power and we have such cross-border terrorism. It's going to be incredibly difficult for that government to not do anything, because that would become a huge election issue on which they would actually lose elections, because those are the kind of sentiments that such things evoke from people. And especially when people get used to the kind of response that India gives, this is now a strategy that won't be easily reversed. The next is deterrence in terms of being militarily strong, that is. Now, being militarily strong is India's best defense because it serves as both a deterrent and a strategic enabler in a volatile geopolitical neighborhood. A strong military backs India's diplomatic position. Always remember, soft power, that is diplomatic power, is only respected when backed by hard power, which is military. The third is strategic autonomy. Now, India can pursue independent foreign policy because of its military muscle. Without military strength, India would be forced into alliances not by choice but by necessity. Because India has a strong armed force, that is why India can think independently. That is why these are trends that are not going to reverse. These are trends that are going to continue for n number of years given what is happening in the world. The last is hybrid warfare. This is something that has come in post 2016-17. Now, modern threats, if you see, these include cyber attacks, terrorism, space warfare, and of course, propaganda that we always see. Technologically equipped military with surveillance, drone, and cyber capabilities can blunt such attacks, at least minimize it. That is why this is such a long term trend that has started in India. Armed forces are not just about tanks and jets anymore. They are the first responders to complex hybrid threats. So let me now come to the specific questions you have to ask while conducting your own qualitative analysis, whether you do it manually or through a AI agent. I've divided it into 6 segments. The first is policy alignment and strategic role. Is the company well positioned under government programs like Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, or key defense exports? Upload all annual reports of the defense companies you know in ChatGPT or Claude AI or whatever AI agents you use. Then ask these questions. I'm just giving you a sample. Order book strength and revenue visibility. Does it have a large, diversified, and executable order book ensuring predictable revenue? All this information you can easily find in annual report. Financial health and stability and profitability as well. Are metrics like ROCE, ROE, profit growth, and cash flows strong and improving? Refer to the videos I've done earlier in Feb where I've explained how to see this. Dedicated videos I've done. Export and private sector opportunities. Is the company gaining global traction through exports or working with global defense majors? You will directly get a list of 2 companies with this. Valuation versus growth. Are you paying a fair price relative to future earnings, order pipeline, and sector tailwinds? A big hint for you, can PEG ratio be of help here? What is PEG ratio? PEG ratio is nothing but P ratio divided by growth, which is you're not looking at P alone. Sometimes a company can have a higher P ratio and it seems expensive, but you measure it in terms of growth, that is with PEG ratio, that company can still be attractive. Again, this is Peter Lynch concept. Execution capability and innovation. Does it have proven manufacturing R&D strength, niche tech in high growth areas like drones, naval vessels, UAV, or cyber defense? Again, the answer of this, you will easily get it through annual reports. AI agents will do the most work for you. If you ask these 6 questions, you will precisely get some companies cater to the global defense trend. And luckily, unlike a sector like bank or finance where you have 30, 40 companies and it gets very difficult to shortlist, in defense it's relatively easy. In the naval domain, the drones domain, there are hardly 2 players. Similarly, when it comes to order book strength, visibility, hardly 2-3 players. And out of 14 companies, I think only 5 companies, all the boxes: Make in India, Atmanirbhar, and key defense export. It's not that difficult. One last line on what the market is doing. Based on the themes that we have discussed, market is climbing the wall of worry, and that is what markets will keep doing. Every conflict, every difficult situation that will be thrown at the market will digest it, climb the wall of worry, and keep moving forward, because that is the trend of 2025. So have a great weekend ahead. Take care and be safe.